No, it's just, I mean, the thought experiment really starts with the 3, because then that informs the 10 teams that would be left over. And then you have to evaluate who would be the 5 and then the other 5, because you don't want a murderer's row per se on the 1-5 and then just like a cakewalk on the other 5. Nobody wants that. The team, in conference teams don't want that, because it would be a tough, road to hoe the one year and then like a cakewalk the next, which, you could talk about, team performance and things like that. And then, just obviously like you're talking about, looking towards the expanded college football playoff and things like that and whatnot. So, it really starts with the 3. And then once you know or have decided, and in Miami's case, again, you're going to have to pick a 3 to then get towards the 10 to then look at. But if it were up to me, which it's clearly not, but it should be because I'm smarter than most of you, it's Florida State, Virginia Tech, and insert third team here. I'm fine with Pittsburgh. Like, it doesn't move me, or anything, but the ACC has tried to push that. And if they want to keep that as one of the 3 tent poles for Miami, fine. I don't really think that there's anybody else. I mean, I would say like a Virginia, but there's no reason for Miami to have tent poles with Virginia and Virginia Tech. But there's a very much stronger case for a tent pole for Virginia Tech in the 3 annual games. But I would say Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh would probably be my look at 3. I can hear some people probably saying like that's a pretty tough 3. That's probably one of the better 3-team groups that you can assemble. So then maybe looking at lowering the level or the caliber of program from one of the other 2. I mean, Florida State's nobody's world beaters right now, even though, they beat us last year, but they're not, national championship, 17 years in a row, top 5 Florida State. They're not that right now. I mean, I think that we can all agree about that, even the guys from last hour's show. That's just a point of fact. But that's a different kind of game and everything. So, I mean, if people want to say, oh, let's make it Duke instead for a consistently easy game that Miami should be winning most years, even though we found a way to lose them 2 years in a row a couple years ago. Thank you, Manny Diaz, for that. I would be open to that scenario as well.
What I'm guessing is going to happen is, let's say they go down that road of Florida State, of course, and let's say Virginia Tech, that they're going to hold off on that 3rd spot until they start filling in all the other spots that are required. And a lot of those are just going to turn out to be defaults. Okay, we got to throw Syracuse over there because they're the one that's left. So there's going to be
it's going to be a lot. I mean, there's going to be, the 1 or 2 that are real firm, set it in stone, 10 commandments kind of way. And then everybody needs a 3rd team. Let's kind of look and then see. And I think that 3rd team guy also goes towards the remaining 10 to see, okay, do we want to have them annually or in that rotation, and then kind of filtering down to get that 3rd team. So, I agree that it will be some, just list making stuff as opposed to traditional draw at a certain point for some schools in their tentpole group. And I think that Miami would be one of those, like we're seeing in this discussion.
And you mentioned the Georgia Tech Clemson rivalry. So Georgia Tech gets, laden with Clemson all the time. They already do. You wonder if they balance that out with, they would never state this, but trying to take historically the worst program. Historically, actually, it's Wake Forest if you look at winning percentages, but certainly they've been much better than that recently. So maybe they say, well, Georgia Tech, we're going to throw you Duke to try to balance that out.
Yeah, we'll throw you a Duke or a Syracuse or, somebody like that and hope that that balances because, you annually play Clemson, which, at a time was like a thing, and okay, cool. But then Clemson became this version of Clemson, and oh boy, that changes it's a thing. Like Miami and Florida State, it's always like a thing. But then when Florida State bossed up a little bit in the early mid 2010s, it kind of changed things.
Yeah, right now Georgia Tech doesn't matter, but 3-4 years ago and before that, Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech, they just went to a ACC championship game in 2014. Yep. Take that situation when they're a factor, and everybody should be treated on the schedule as a factor. Nothing should be a given like, oh, it's just Duke, so we don't care who we put on their schedule. That it should be, everything should be taken seriously. Since they already have Clemson, and when they cycle to a certain team, let's say back in the day, 2014, if Georgia Tech would cycle to, that other team non-division is Florida State, then suddenly you've got a brutal non-division schedule, and you're competing for a division title with Pittsburgh, who let's say that year has Syracuse and BC when they're no good, and it creates a very uneven and unfair situation for teams that are competing for a championship.
Thanks.
I'll use this one example before we move on. I was going through this process and I looked at the SEC, and this was about 8 or 9 years ago, something in that range. Alabama and LSU, of course, play in the same division. So they play the same 5 opponents in their division, play each other. So there's the 2 crossovers. In this particular year, Alabama was playing Tennessee and Vanderbilt. And those 2 teams were a combined 1-15 in the conference the year before. They were 1-7 and 0-8. LSU, who they were their chief competitors for the division championship, this is back, when LSU was as good as Alabama practically. LSU was playing Georgia and Florida, who were 7-1, 7-1 the year before. So you're having 2 teams compete for a division championship. One of them plays 2 non-division opponents who went 1-15 the year before. The other one plays 2 division opponents that went 14-2 the year before. I think that can be avoided.
I agree.